We're recording you all today, so everybody needs to be on their absolute best behavior.
We wouldn't be otherwise.
They're coming here. Yeah, exactly. The few that left.
So if we're fumbling around a little bit, it's only because we're trying to record this for some folks who are not able to make it here. Well, welcome everybody to our IOLS and Cub Scout, Boy Scout, all that sort of thing, training day that's being sponsored by several of our districts, Towpath District, Black Creek, and Genesee Crossroads. So how many of you are here for the Cub Scout side of things, for Den Leader or Cub Master? How about what else? The COR, the Charter Org Rep. Okay, so three of you. Committee training? Okay.
Great.
Good. All right. Well, we wanted to start out a little bit with an opening. Before we did that, I wanted to, this is sort of a little thing that I've done at most of my training sessions that I do, or that I'm involved in, and that is to talk just for a second about the aims of scouting and the real goal of scouting. What's that? Did I make a mistake?
No, she was being Vanna.
Oh, man. So,
RJ, why don't
you know,
introduce us?
yeah, so I'm RJ Stansberry. Introduce yourself, please.
Janine Thompson, Towpath.
Christine Gervais, Genesee Crossroads.
Teresa Rudd, Black Creek.
Dan Skurlock, Black Creek.
Charles Boyer, Bay Waters.
Great, thank you.
Do we want to do our Pledge of Allegiance?
We're going to get to that in just a second. Thank you very much.
We're gonna tell him how to do straight.
So, yeah, I wanted to mention something about the aims of scouting, really, while all of us are together, because I think it's something that we need to be reminded of from time to time, particularly when it comes to training Boy Scout leaders, Assistant Scout Masters, the whole 9 yards, to remind ourselves a little bit about what those aims of scouting are. So, quiz, right? Session 1 here, quiz. What are some of the aims of scouting? Or what are the 3 aims of scouting that we have? Paula, you're not allowed to answer. What are the 3 aims of scouting? Well, let me tell you what they are not. The aims of scouting are not to learn how to tie a bowline knot. The aims of scouting are not to learn how to be a camping expert. The aims of scouting are not to be an Eagle Scout. Right? Is that surprising? The aims of scouting are not to be a general in the Army. You know, things like that. The aims of scouting are threefold. There are 3 things that we try to develop with regard to scouting: character development, citizenship, and physical fitness. For how many of you is this the first time that you've come across that concept? Everybody's seen that before? Okay.
I haven't. I'm
Haven't?
brand
Okay.
spanking new.
Brand new, yeah. So, thank you.
You're doing it right.
Character development, okay, is a key thing. It's really a key thing. The main job, the main goal of all of us in our various leadership roles is to instill in the hearts and minds of these scouts character development, right? We want to have kids who are of good quality character. And that's why the mission, and you know what the mission of the Scouts is? The mission of the BSA? Anybody know what that is? Anybody want to hazard a guess at that?
Be
All right.
good.
See, you guys are getting your money's worth. You know? That $5 is going a long way. So here's the mission of the BSA. Again, this might surprise you a little bit. Not to prepare Eagle Scouts or even leaders. Even leaders. The mission of the BSA is for very young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetime by instituting in them the principles and values of the Scout Oath and Law. That's where the character is. So for all of us, as we're embarking on new leadership roles going forward here, whether it's in the Cub Scout role or in the Boy Scout role, whether you're serving on a committee or as a charter organization member or representative, I'd ask you just to keep that in the back of your mind, that at the end of the day, the real goal in all that we do, is to help these young people to make choices right? And that's where the character building is, to help them make choices based on the values that are outlined in the Scout Oath and Law. Does that make sense? Right? Okay, good. That's my little sermonette for today, and then we'll get on with the flag ceremony. So let's all stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, so you're all IOLS folks, right? So does that make sense, the idea of character development with regard to what it is that we do? It's really an important point that I've started highlighting a lot more in the trainings that I've done, just to try to help us to remember, particularly in a skills-based class like IOLS, where everybody wants to get into the gear and practice fire building and doing all kinds of crazy stuff like that. That's a lot of fun stuff. But at the end of the day, we're trying to build character, and I just wanted to highlight that, particularly for those of us that work in the area of Boy Scouts. So we're going to try for this IOLS Class A. This is essentially the classroom session. How many of you have done the B section already? So we're going to start this off. The sessions that we have today, we're covering interfaith, we're covering plant and animal ID, and Charles is going to help us with that. We're doing packing and hiking techniques. We'll do that at the very end. We're doing a little something on flag ceremonies and a little something on outdoor ethics. Those are the main syllabus modules that we're going to try to cover today. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Charles. He's going to spend some time talking about plant and animal ID. And thank you, Charles, for coming to help us.
Okay, just a little bit about my background. I'm a retired science teacher in the Rochester City School District. I found out early in my scouting years that I really love the outdoors. I don't know how much of an expert I am, but I just want to mention one thing also on the Scout law. One of our Eagle Scouts giving the Eagle charge to his brother asked what was the most important word in the Scout law. Anybody know? One word. Yeah, but you're trained, you
I'm
know
sorry,
all this.
I'm a ringer, I'm sorry.
The word is. Think about that for a minute. Anyway, let me get to my stuff. I've got a bunch of handouts and gonna just kind of help you with plant identification. We'll start with the plants. They've given me an hour and 45 minutes. I am not gonna take that long. This is from a very old boy's life. And it's just kind of a fun thing to do. You can make copies of it if you wish. We'll start with that one. You try to identify the trees. The answers are in the bottom right-hand corner, by the way.
In really, really tiny print.
Yeah, this is the way it was in the magazine, sorry.
Oh, well, that's because it's for kids and they can read that stuff.
Yeah, they can read it.
It's
If I
upside
get my
down.
contact lenses in, I couldn't read it.
Yep.
But most of you will know most of the trees there. If you don't, you can cheat. You can look them up on the bottom. I don't have a problem with that. And you get the message. I don't remember what the message is, but just kind of have fun with it if you wish. In the winter, you have pine trees, conifers. Everybody know the difference between a conifer and a deciduous tree? I'm seeing a lot of, anybody not know the difference?
Well, hang on, because, so I'm assuming you're heading at the fact that the deciduous dropped their leaves.
Except for one.
Yeah, well, all right, except for one deciduous? Or, because
No,
there are.
one conifer.
Yes, that's, thank you.
Anybody know which one it is?
I don't remember, I just know that there's one.
Larch, also called tamarack or hackmatack, the old Indian names. Conifer drops its leaves, don't ask me why. Here's another little key on how to identify conifers. Again, use it as you wish. Hopefully it'll help some of you. I should have the original someplace. The other thing that I find very useful is use people in your troop. Maybe there's a hunter. They'll know a lot of these things. okay? I was camping with another troop a couple of weeks ago. Our troop, the other troop invited us to their campsite. And their senior patrol leader knew a lot of the trees, a lot of the plants, a lot of the animals. And what he didn't know, their scoutmaster knew. And so we walked around for about an hour, and 10 plants, 10 animals, easy. This is a very, how many of you have used a key to identify plants or animals? Okay, here's a very simple example. And I'll go, for those of you who haven't used a key, I'll use this and go through it very quickly. All kinds of leaves, simple, compound. Simple leaf is one leaf, compound has many leaves on a stem. You identify leaves by the margins, the general shape,
Arrangement on stem.
arrangement on the stem works, a lot of different things. Okay, so if you take a leaf, how many of you know what a leaf from a horse chestnut looks like? Okay, you've got 5 leaves kind of all put together, and then a maple leaf is a single leaf. So maple would be simple, horse chestnut would be compound. You look at your little key here, leaf is simple. You go to what it says here, is leaf lobed or not lobed, which would mean just loops. I don't have pictures of all of those, but the idea is still there. And again, any of these things, you have to learn a whole new vocabulary. You see palmate and pinnate. Palmate looks like your palm. What leaf looks like this? Maple, yeah. Pinnate looks like a feather. You have one main vein going up and then all the veins going to the side. So that's how you would separate those, and you just keep going. Every key will give you 2 choices. Okay? You pick the choice that fits and keep going. Not all keys work easily. No, I'll tell you that when I get into the animals.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, please.
And this could be just an ignorant question, because I'm actually still relatively new to getting into all of my learning. But if you had a kid who asked you, well, why do I even need to know this? Because when I think about how scout skills have changed over the year and years, and how the outdoor code has changed, and you know, we're not cutting down trees, we're not using them for things, and you know, so what besides, it's really cool stuff to know. What is the scout's position on, or your position on what makes this useful?
It's a very good question. You could go back to what the trees were used for originally. Maples for sugar, which was found out totally accidentally, by the way. The American Indians tasted some of the sap for some reason, and it was just very slightly sweet, and they figured out what to do with it. Things like pine, which were used for lumber and still are. Redwood is still used for lumber. I mean, some of these things, if you go up Massawepie, that main road is a lumbering road.
Yeah.
So the trees are still used. Paul?
One of the reasons when we were talking about what scouting is about, and I joke with my son all the time, well, it's a semi-joke, is that scouting is about preparing you for the zombie apocalypse. And the thing is, though, I made the point when we've had these hurricanes the last several years. We've had sections where there have been tornadoes or other storms of sorts that have wiped out power. And so one of the things I said, some of the things that you learn in scouting are immediately applicable in the case of emergency. There's all the first aid pieces, of course. But if you're in an area that's without power for significantly long periods of time, you've got to be able to come up with wood to burn. You've got to figure out what you can eat. You've got to be able to build shelters. And that's stuff that Scouts teaches. And learning what trees are appropriate for that kind of stuff, and who sheds, and what can you eat off of a tree. And is it in season? Is it likely to stand in a wind? Things like that are all really important things to learn. So being able to identify a tree makes
Right.
sense.
Very good.
That's good.
Yep.
Zombie apocalypse.
I know, and I'm with, because my son was fascinated with tree identification and plant identification when he was in middle school, and he is the ultimate forager. If you are lost in the woods, that kid will find you food.
We'll make sure we bring him along.
Yeah, but yet, on the survival merit badge, it specifically says, don't eat, don't forage for food. And I was like, wait, this is, it feels like mixed messages.
Well, yeah, on the merit badge, they're not trusting that you have learned adequately. And
Yeah,
they-
that's why
they
I
don't
figured
want-
it was
they don't want
probably
kids getting
insurance
Well,
related.
A standard example I use of that is mushrooms,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Any of you eat mushrooms? Sure, you buy them from Wegmans in the can, right?
I buy them dry, but yeah.
Or you buy them dry, okay. There are only 2 mushrooms I would eat, that I would recognize.
Morals,
Morels and puffballs.
yes.
Anything else I stay away from. I have a friend who knows his mushrooms and he would know what to pick. But many years ago, there was a story in the newspaper. A family from Vietnam, where one of the Asian countries came over, and they had hunted mushrooms, collected mushrooms back home. They went out to Grand Eastern Park, saw mushrooms that looked exactly like what they had back home, took them home, ate them, died.
Yep.
Yep.
Mushroom identification is really difficult.
It's difficult, and like I say, if you don't know what they are, just stay away
Yeah.
from them.
But there's just so many other really cool things that you can eat that, cattail pollen, the whole cattail.
Right.
Anyway, I don't want to derail you,
Wild
but.
berries, strawberries,
Yeah.
things like that.
The roots of the clean lace,
Yeah, there's-
dandelion things.
If you,
There's all
if you
kinds
know
of-
what you're doing, yes.
Right.
If you don't know what you're doing, stay away.
You
Yeah.
can make yourself, at best, you can make yourself very sick. And then we got the whole dye thing. And dying
Yes.
is something to be avoided, so,
Yeah, I figured it was probably more the insurance side of it, but I just figured I'd ask. That's what I do, I ask questions.
I have all kinds of stuff, tree checklist, look through it, and Coming Nature Center. With nice pictures, I didn't make copies of all of this, obviously, didn't have time or the wherewithal. To identify trees and shrubs. Field guides are great. Of course, if you're hiking, you don't want to carry a whole bunch of books. One of the other ladies pointed me out to something. There is an app for your phone.
I've got a couple of them. One is the University of Virginia, or Virginia Tech's tree identifier, and it downloads completely. So even if you're without Wi-Fi or any cell signal, you can completely use it to identify trees.
Okay, the one she has is something called Picture This, plant identification.
Mhm.
And I showed her a couple of pictures that I'll show you in a minute, and
Is it just trees or is it general?
plant identification.
Great.
Picture this, plant identification. And I'm gonna download that on my phone eventually. And the reason to use it now is you can't take the cell phones away from the kids.
So it's
Okay.
very useful.
So you're giving them something useful. You go out on your hike to find your 10 plants, there it is.
That's really good.
I still like the keys and that sort of thing. Important trees, forests. This one is local from Albany. I don't even know where I collected most of these things at this point. This is Eastern Forest, so that would be helpful for us. Cornell put out a bulletin. I was talking about the margins of the leaves and stuff. That'll give you a full picture. Again, I don't have copies for everybody.
Could you pass that one around so we
Yes,
can look at it?
Absolutely. I just did my wilderness first aid training, and one of the pieces of that is poisonous plants.
Nice to meet you, sorry.
Not necessarily ingesting, but poison oak, poison sumac. And this company puts out this little brochure, Zanfeld Laboratories, because they're selling their product. And it evidently works. I've only seen poison ivy. I have not seen poison oak or poison sumac. I understand poison oak is around.
I've seen sumac one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it here.
It's
Poison
in
ivy.
Arundicoid.
Hmm?
It's in Arundicoid.
Poison sumac?
Yeah.
Okay. Pass around some bigger pictures. Poison ivy is an interesting plant. It's leaflets 3, and I already talked about did I talk about leaflets as opposed to leaves? Don't think so, okay, I was talking to that. Leaves come right off of the stem of the plant. Leaflets, group of 3, together, but the stem is here, where it attaches. Poison ivy, always 3 leaves, when the leaves are out. And the leaves are generally 3 different shapes, which also helps to identify them. There are lots of other plants with 3 leaves. If you don't know, stay away from them. The other interesting thing about poison ivy is it's active all year long. Doesn't matter if the leaves are there or not.
The dead vine on the.
Dead vine on, what looks like the dead vine on the
It's
tree.
not
It's
dead.
not dead. And you can identify the vine sometimes because it has these little hair-like structures that adhere to the tree. And I've seen vines that are this thick. Yeah. So that's pretty impressive. You know, they're up the sides of the tree, but they are active. Even in the late, that way they'll be as shrubs. They're really difficult. But I'll pass that. They're not labeled. The first one coming around is poison ivy. The second one is poison oak. Leaves are still 3 leaflets, but pretty much all the same shape. And the last one is poison sumac, which looks like just a standard branch. And I kind of like to have some fun with the kids. I usually show them these pictures before we go off for a walk. English ivy, Virginia creeper. A lot of people will mistake Virginia creeper for one of these. Virginia creeper has 5 leaflets. That's actually a better picture of it. I'll just pass around the poison ones.
I was astounded when I saw how huge poison ivy can be.
Yeah, I was just
Did
saying.
you show that? I'm sorry, I was in the bathroom.
Stems this big around.
Well, that, but the leaves,
They
I've
can be
never, near my mother's house, these single leaves are like this.
Yep,
And it had the berries.
yep. And the other thing I just mentioned to everybody else is it's active all the time,
Oh, yes.
even if it looks dead.
Mm-hmm.
Stay away from it.
And if you dig it up at the roots, you still need protection all the way down.
And if you, as a friend of mine did, he was pulling out weeds and tried to burn it.
Oh, bad.
Bad, right into the lungs. He was in the hospital
I was
for
gonna
it.
say, that's a hospital visit.
Yep, that is. There's all kinds of salves and stuff you can use on it. If you don't have anything else, calamine lotion, Caladrill, that stuff will take some of the itch away. I'm gonna say something else and I can't remember what now.
Technu works.
Technu works
Yeah.
pretty well. There's also, I tested it this summer, actually, it was Burt's Bees makes a poison ivy soap
Okay,
that you can, and it's very good at breaking up the oils, which is the big
Oh,
issue.
that is the issue.
And,
Because Technu does a good job with that too, yeah.
right, but Technu doesn't fit, it is liquid and doesn't
Yes.
travel well when I need to go on an airplane.
Oh.
Right.
So bar of soap
Yes.
travels.
So the Burt's
It's
Bees
thin.
actually breaks down the oil?
yeah.
Yep, and it's very thin and and I can travel with it, so.
Oh, good to
It's an
know.
easier
Yeah.
travel thing.
And the easiest thing to do if you think you've been through poison ivy is all your clothes go in the wash and you go in the shower. Lots of soap and water. Because it takes the oils a little while to actually get going.
Mhm.
So if you can take care of yourself quickly, you've got a shot. I've been through it. I've never come down with it. But I do. I go home and shower and do whatever.
There's also a plant, ever heard of jewweed?
Julie, yes.
Yeah, supposedly it grows, I have no idea what it looks like, but supposedly it grows in the same environment as poison
Right,
ivy.
and it's
You can
supposed to help, right.
break it off and rub it on you, but, you know, I
And
don't know
if
what it
you're
looks like.
aware of it when that you, oh, I just stepped in poison ivy or just brushed against it with my bare skin, then look around and you know what you're looking for, it works. But
Yep.
usually by the time you realize that you've been through poison ivy, you're way far away from jewelry.
Right, but yes, I have heard of
But
that
if you're
one, too.
camping in an area, you might be able to find it.
And did you already mention about the second-hand contact with it too? So if you get the oils on, say,
No, I didn't.
I don't know if it's worthwhile for people to know, but.
What, if you get it on your clothes or on your gloves,
Mhm.
and then even though you're all clean, and then you put your gloves back on, you've now recontaminated yourself.
Right, throw the gloves out.
Yeah, get rid of the gloves.
Anything else we're supposed to say about plants? Seasonal plants, talked about the poison ivy and, you know, what it looks like. The plants do change according to season. Of course, you've got your deciduous trees and conifers, flowering plants, most of those die during the winter. Uses of plants, kind of talked about that. I mean, there's food, there's lumber, dyes.
Mhm.
Anything else that I'm missing? Tea. Oh, that's one of my favorites. Yep. No, that's it. Oh, sassafras works. Sassafras is interesting. If you break the leaves apart, I'm going against all the outdoor code, I know.
If you were lost and needed to depend on these things,
Yes.
otherwise we don't do this.
Right. If you break the leaves apart and smell them, they smell like lemon.
Mhm.
Very nice. And those come, sassafras, the leaves are three shapes. Palm, mitten, and whatever this would be called.
Double thumb.
No, you know, anyway, that works. The other tea and or kind of lemonade I like is staghorn sumac,
Mm. Mhm.
tree with big red berries. I used to just dump them in hot water and that sort of thing. Now I take a piece of cheesecloth and make a tea bag.
Mhm.
It's a little bitter, a little sugar helps it. And again, you can make it cold. You have to, and that's seasonal, I don't remember which season, but you look for the berries that are nice and heavy, reddish, and that works. I'm trying to think what other plants.
Mint.
Mint is good, yeah. Brush that out, put it in tea.
Chicory root is supposed to be good, roasted. It's supposed to taste like coffee.
Yeah, I like my coffee real.
Yeah.
Rosebuds will also make a tea.
Yeah.
Which was that?
Rosebuds.
Rosebuds, yeah. Rose hips,
Yeah.
yeah. So there are plants out there that you can use. I've done this with kids. I've done the puffballs, I've done the tea with the sumac, and they're all saying, "You're gonna eat that?" Yeah, it's perfectly fine. But I also tell them, especially with the mushrooms, you know, you don't go out and just pick.
It takes years to be an expert on your local mushrooms.
Oh, yeah.
And as the example you gave, things like mushrooms can look identical, but unless you're local, you don't know.
Yeah, and that is a true story.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I've heard things like that.
Yeah, you really need to be careful. I just want to make sure I've covered what I'm supposed to. Treatment for poisonous plants. Okay. I do want to, at some point, for me, use the phone app. I've never done that. So it's going to be
I've
interesting.
used the Virginia Tech Tree app several times when I've been in places like Cutler with no service. And, you know, or at various other parks we have.
What's the
It's
title?
Virginia Tech's tree identification app. And so it has the VT logo, because, you know, it's Virginia Tech, they're very proud of their logo. And it's a big download the first time. It doesn't update constantly because, you know, trees don't change that much. So it has like little updates if the app changes, but the big download is the database that it runs off of, so it can run completely offline.
Okay. The only trouble is, that's only trees.
Right, but this one, but what it does is it does step you through the whole process, so you actually get to understand how to use the keys, rather than a photo identifier that needs internet to match up, where you're not learning how to identify for yourself.
Okay.
So it's helpful in that.
Hey, this is just another key for trees of northeastern America. I'll pass this one around, I don't have copies, but just to give you an idea. So, basically, I think I'm done on plants unless there's other questions.
I know the Scout Shop has a variety of handy laminated fold-out things of the most common ones.
Right, those are great. I was actually looking for one.
I should have brought my set.
That sort of thing for animals of Cape Cod. I was looking for that just to show you what those things look like. School I taught at used to do a field trip, 3 or 4 day field trip to Cape Cod. And we had inner city kids, we'd go down on the bay, and they'd be picking up shells and all kinds of stuff. And it was great to see these, mostly 13 and 14-year-olds. This is how you teach, okay? You get them down there, they're picking up the stuff, coming up to the 3 or 4 teachers who are there, what is this, what is this, what is this?
Right.
And it got to the point eventually where they didn't come to us, they knew what it was. And we just show them the picture, give them the sheet, match it up.
Yeah, so if the Scout office is open today, we have a break or something, stop in, they have a whole selection on all kinds of topics of these very quick guides to various things, so. Yes, I'm doing my advertisement for the Scout office.
Oh, that's okay.
They are pretty well supplied on that, and I visit them frequently to see if there's another one I don't have.
All right, well, I'm gonna go on to animals, which I like better. And I think most kids do too. Okay, just identifying animals. The requirement is to find evidence of these. And I looked through the Scout Handbook, and it says find evidence of these animals, and it gives, mammals and this and that and other things. And it leaves out amphibians, I think. Although what it does say is animals like. So if we're out identifying things, I put amphibians in there too. And I've got lots of stuff. I'm going to start with birds. Armchair birding. These are fun to give to your kids. I'm sure I keep my original.
Yep.
And I do have the answer key for that, but it's over here. The kids will have trouble with this because some of the birds are kind of obscure. While that's going on, to identify animals, lots of different ways to identify evidence of animals. The easiest one?
Cat.
No, you see the animal.
You see the animal.
You're at Cutler and the deer runs by.
Hey, there's a deer.
Yeah, and I've had that happen. Of course, I've also had deer in my backyard.
Yeah, I don't have quarters.
No, you really don't define deer, alive or dead. Okay, so that's one way, actually seeing the animal. If you're talking about birds, what else?
Hearing them.
Hearing them, sure. What else can you use? Tracks. Okay, and you mentioned the other one, scat, poop.
You're seeing, if you're talking birds, you can see feathers.
See feathers, this walk with the other troop, turkey feathers. You're in the right season. My best thing is actually seeing the animal. That's always fun. On this little hike we took with this other troop, walks along this little stream, turns over 3 rocks, the third one, little salamander. Is at Cutler when my son was a scout, which was many years ago. Had to be February or so. There was still snow on the ground. There was a garter snake sitting on the snow. On the sunny side of the hill. But it was there. Wasn't moving very fast. So you can see all these things. I'll be nice, I'll pass around the answer key for that. How many of you got any of them?
I'm just starting to look at it. My mother has a book where Cornell puts it out, and you have a page and you have like this, you know the kids' talking books where they, tell a story, and as you turn the page, it triggers different options. This does this with bird calls. So I can hear bird call, and if I have an idea, I can kind of flip through and say, is it this one? And it gives like the 3 different calls.
One of the activities at CPC has that sort of thing. And I frequently do that one as my volunteer thing.
I often say, I need it to identify who's waking me up at 4:30 in the morning, things like that.
Yeah, I have friends who, one little chirp and they know what bird it is. Not me,
I'm not that good.
no.
Not on birds.
Again, things like field guides. Probably don't want to carry them. Did I have enough there?
Just one more.
That was the answer key?
Yeah, and I definitely need it.
I think we need 4 more.
One more?
We need 4 more.
Oh,
Oh, they missed them.
Then they haven't gone around them. I made 15 copies of
Oh,
them.
Sorry,
So, if you're using a field guide like this for birds, they're grouped according to the kind of bird it is. Like blackbirds, you'll have the crow and the raven and things like that. The raptors, the hawks, and all that will be together. When you get to the small birds like the warblers, they'll be grouped as warblers, but then they'll be grouped by color.
Yeah.
And they're crazy. But these are, I love this one because you also have the area map in the back. So if you think you have a bird and you identify it and it isn't listed down there, well, the birds don't always follow the same pattern. They don't know where the boundaries are.
They don't
but,
read the signs and look at the maps.
Right. That's like the moose in New Hampshire don't always cross at the moose crossings. But if it's not in there, then you might want to go back and check your ID again, see if you're really right. This isn't the one I usually use. I have a golden guide, but I couldn't find it.
It's in your backpack.
No, I don't carry books around usually.
Well, I'm thinking, the books I take on like day trips, so it might be on my, if I got a day pack or something,
Right,
I might
yeah.
carry the book for that. But
Yeah.
not on the longer thing where I'm
No.
going for whiteboard.
well, that's where leaving the phone is a great idea. If you can, snap a picture and then you can look it up in your big phone.
Right,
Right,
and then
yeah.
there's always a few of the fold-out things that are fairly
Yeah.
lightweight for
Yeah.
certain kinds of stuff.
We were at Massawebe, and there was an insect there that none of us recognized. Took a picture of it, sent it to my friend, the naturalist, and he sent back, this is what it is. But we were in a place where I did have reception.
Yeah, you went to the one spot of last week.
No, there's a lot of spots now.
Yeah, it has gotten better, yeah, it was better this summer.
This was a couple of years ago, we were in Newcomb.
Oh.
And my phone actually worked better than the Scoutmaster's. My phone was newer. And I just got a new phone last week, so I'm hoping things are better. And things are getting better up there anyway.
Right.
A couple of years ago, I had to travel almost to Tupper to call my mother from there.
I know.
You've been there, huh?
Yeah, they have much better phone service.
Yeah.
than
And
Massachusets.
I think
Newcomb
also
isn't that
depending
far
on
from
which
Gannett,
carrier
there's
you
service
have.
there, so,
The carrier makes a difference at Massawee too.
yeah. So there's one field guide. Let's stay with the birds. If you want a smaller field guide, this one's not bad. It does have some color to it. I can just pass these around. If you're not familiar with Peterson, they make field guides to everything. There's also golden guides, and that's the one I usually use for my birds, just because I started with it. And like I say, some of these are, here's another way to, we'll go to a different kind of bird, the raptors. Here's another way to identify them. They're usually flying up pretty high, right? Silhouettes. Okay. This I would guess is, if I remember right, red tail. Yep. Short tail, short stubby wings.
The very broad wings.
Broad, yeah, these are the broad wings. Four raptors in this group: the red-tailed, broad-winged, red-shouldered, and rough-legged. The one you'll see most often is the red-tail. And if you get the sunlight hitting it right, it's that nice red rusty color. My wife doesn't want me to point these out to her anymore.
They're everywhere.
I used to use these with the kids in school.
I like this idea, yeah.
You said it.
I saw the answer.
Oh, you saw that. Osprey.
That's first, that's
White belly, usually dark line through the eye. You can see that well. There is an osprey nest at Nesawebe. I've actually seen the osprey come down. We were on the 5 mile hike. Osprey comes down, gets a fish, goes back up to the nest. It is. They'll build their nests on top of poles. All right, I'm not going to let you see the answer.
Falcon.
No?
No?
Hawk.
Well, these are, yeah, they're all hawks.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I suppose not. The osprey isn't really a hawk. The falcons aren't hawks. 3 in this group, these are the exhibitors: goshawk, hoovershawk, and sharpshin. These are the ones that will be flying through the woods. You got it. That's the key. Long tail for steering and short wings so they don't hit the trees.
Interesting.
Very good.
I didn't know that.
It's another hawk. This is a marsh hawk. They'll be flying along the shorelines. And they've got a, you can't see it on here, but they've got a white patch right about here on top. Probably the most common one flying around here.
I'm trying to like translate to not Midwestern terms. I'd call it a turkey buzzard, but.
Close enough, turkey vulture. Yeah, big, black, sometimes mistaken for crows, but these are
But you
a
said
lot
these-
bigger. It's a turkey vulture.
Yeah, but you said these were all hawks. Are those in the hawk family?
They're in the raptor family.
Are they? Okay, I didn't realize they, because I thought they just fed on carrion, so.
They do.
But I thought raptors specifically went for live prey.
These are all in the raptor group. I
Interesting,
guess
okay.
not. Yes, and, you know, people kind of complain about them eating the carrion, but they're great to have around.
I'd rather than eat the carrion than have to deal with it myself.
Or have it sit there and rot and smell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm open to it.
They're just creepy the way they circle.
I taught at Charlotte, and we'd go up on the roof and watch them in the spring. Big kettles, they're called. You just circle, keep
Yeah.
going east, keep going east, keep going east. Why don't they just cross the lake?
You can't see it.
They've got the stamina to do it. They're lazy. They use the thermals to get up to the far east end of the lake and just cross the river. Yeah. But they do, they eat a lot of the carrion. Why no feathers on the head?
The head clean.
Yeah, you don't want to stick all your feathers in the carrion. probably the biggest of these birds,
Eagle?
eagles. Bald eagle and golden eagle. Both of them will fly along the same path as the turkey vultures, and all the other hawks migrate that way, going north during the summer.
I didn't think of them as being migratory. Okay.
All of them protected, you know. And I've seen bald eagles and goldens flying across that path.
Yeah.
A few years ago, we were going up to, my son went to University of Ottawa, crossing the bridge at Alexandria Bay. Bald eagle flew right across, up on top of the bridge. I walked out of the library in Penfield one day and looked up. There was a bald eagle flying.
In the wintertime, they'll come down, well, like you said, down away from the lake, looking for food.
Well, most of these migratory birds will end up flying south into Pennsylvania and farther
Okay.
south than that.
Because our friend's trail cam caught one on a dead deer.
Yep.
And it was, quite a distance from the lake.
All right, do this one next. Smaller raptors. Actually, not all of them are that small. These are the falcons.
Oh, there's the falcon, okay.
Peregrine, the fastest bird, over 200 miles an hour in a dive. The merlins, called pigeon hawks because that would be their prey. There used to be a merlin nest right outside of Handicraft at Massawepie. One of the trees up there, you see them flying. Then the kestrel, the sparrowhawk, small hawk, real pretty little bird. Pointed wings, that's one of the keys on this one.
There used to be falcons in one of the buildings in Rochester, I thought.
There are peregrines. They used to be,
Was it in
There's on the
Kodak?
Grant building.
they used to be in the Kodak Tower, I think.
Yeah, and there's also the Grant building last year,
The falcons moved, and they have a camera on them, and you can actually watch them.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I thought.
And if you sit at a Red Wings game, sometimes you can see them flying around, because they're right there. And then owls.
I was just wondering where the owls were going.
All kinds of owls around here, short heads, broad wings. How do you identify owls other than that? See them, hear them. Again, another story I like to tell. We were at Cutler, Chipmunk Hollow, one of the lean-to sites, and we heard a great horned owl. I called it. Did my owl call? It flew into the campsite, into a tree in the campsite. We had a conversation for about 15 minutes.
Nice.
I'm not sure what I said.
Demo,
Evidently interesting.
demo. Come on. Good.
And I actually had done that twice. The only thing about the owl is you never hear it flying. They have special little hooks on their feathers so that the feathers don't ruffle against each other. And they will, this thing flew into the campsite, didn't even know it was in the tree until it called again. So kids love that.
One of the ones that's around here a lot also is the screech owl.
Yeah, screech owl,
And that's the one that the description I read on that, because I was hearing this strange noise, I swear it was like the haunted horse in my, like very late evening, I would hear it, it was after dark, and I could swear it's like this demented horse, was somewhere in the trees around my house. And so I was looking, so I actually finally Googled, horse call at night. Because I knew it was a bird of some sort. I figured it was an owl, but like, what was this? They said it was like something screech owl. And I'm like, okay, now that I know what that it's there, it doesn't bother me the same way as not knowing what it was. But it's one that's great for scaring campers.
another little booklet on birds of prey. These aren't complete, but birds of New York. See lots of turkeys along the thruway.
On the way to Massawepie.
Way to Massawepie on 81. Clark Road in Penfield, there's this little dip in the hangout down there. Raptors, gulls, owls of New York. I try for the most part, I think, to stick to the stuff that's we're gonna see around here.
I think a lot of youth don't realize that turkeys actually do fly.
They do, but not very well. If they're gonna roost at night, they get up into a tree maybe as high as the ceiling.
Yeah.
That'll be it. But you'll see feathers, you'll see footprints. Bird footprints are usually three toes front, one in the back. Can't do it with my hand. Except for woodpeckers. They'll have 2 and 2. That lets them grip out of the trees, right? Not sure why I have 2 copies of these. I think they're different. I'm gonna go past the birds unless there are questions. But woodpeckers also you identify by, okay? My daughter was out with us and there was one that sounded like a jackhammer. Pileated woodpecker, stands about yay high. Took us a while to find it, but it was they're huge, they're gorgeous. They do have a nest in Harris Hill again. I live in Penfield, so they're out there. I know people who've had them come right to their house. They'll do a lot of damage to wood siding.
Yes.
My daughter had that. Anyway, anything else on birds? Like I say, sight, sound, color, probably the best things to identify them by. Butterflies and moths you can go forever with. Matter of fact, I just wrote to Doug Reynolds for CTC. Why not insects? Why not butterflies? Why not beetles? Instead of some of this other stuff.
I'm trying to update some of the things.
Well, just for the patches.
Yeah,
And he wrote back and said, oh, that's a good idea.
yeah.
Probably not for next year, he's probably already got that. So,
He's got, I think, next year and ideas on the year after, but yeah.
so there's butterflies and moths. These aren't really great for identifying because they're not very complete, but a lot of the stuff is in there. Nature, nature hike activities, put together by a friend of a friend. Just some ideas here. You do it like a jumble with names of things. Nature hunt, kind of like a scavenger hunt, on those. Leaf prints, plaster casts with animal footprints. Another one we did once, take a square foot of ground, see how many things you can identify in it. And it's amazing what's in a square foot of soil.
Are you allowed to dig?
Hmm?
Are you allowed to dig for your square foot?
No,
Oh, okay.
just what's on top.
All right.
And you'll get different grasses, weeds, depending on the season, you can get insects, worms, beetles. Okay, we talked a little bit about identifying, go to mammals now. Make sure, I know where I have this. Sorry about the printing, but I think you'll be able to read that one. Big mammals you identify by tracks. And by the way they walk. There are things that walk on flat feet, things that walk on their toes. What was the other one on there?
Whether or not they're in a straight line versus staggered.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, when you get that, I mean, the obvious ones that you'll see, especially in the snow, are rabbit, squirrel, deer. There's a few others on there that are interesting. I just printed out all the copies of that, so. Deer tracks are pretty easy. See those all the time. Moose tracks are basically the same except a lot bigger. Yeah. Ones that usually kids have trouble with are squirrel and rabbit. But if you see the actual pattern, the way they move, the rabbit, of course, brings the hind feet around in front when it hops, so you can tell that the big feet are there. Yeah, I already talked about birds. Mouse is pretty obvious. And you can, there's other things you can use. This is a little track finder that I find handy. I also have that one's pretty good. And if you want to get more extensive, you can go to the Peterson guide again. A lot of tracks in there. So I mean, there's a lot of resources you can use. The computer, phones nowadays, which I never used. I'm also a reptile and amphibian counselor, parent age counselor, which changed. It used to be only reptiles a long time ago. And half of the requirements were for amphibians. And I wrote to whoever and said, you know, if you're gonna include them, you ought to either make 2 separate merit badges or label it differently. And they decided to label it differently. So when I have kids come to me and they talk about their merit badge, what animals they've used, I usually try to look them up and give them some more information. This is a pretty big field guide. Yes?
I'm sorry, on the printout, the left side was a little bit faded. And
Yes,
so
I know.
if you could just tell me what were the headers,
First one, squirrel.
Well, no, I got those, but like categories. I got toe walkers that I can read, and then
Toe walkers, toenail walkers,
toenail. So like the hoofed ones are toenail.
yeah.
And then what's the first category of like, we're on top of
You know
squirrels?
what, I can't read it either. I think it's flat foot,
Flat foot, that makes sense.
or full foot or something like
Full
that.
foot, okay,
Okay,
thank you.
yep. So anyway, this is just eastern and central North America. Nothing out west. And it's huge. A lot of reptiles, a lot of amphibians. Amphibians not doing too well these days. Taking away their habitat, you know. And the other one that I'll talk about a little bit is I also do insect study. I've only had 2 kids come to me for that. One was a student of mine, and we could do it in class. And it's tough because one of the requirements is to make an insect collections. And you have to kill the insects, and so there's that moral dilemma. Because insects are food for other things. You know, some insects are good, some are not so good. But how to make an insect collection, and I have done this. It should be a way around it these days. Yeah.
Do the new requirements allow for pictures?
Not that I've seen. Yeah, I don't know if there's another edition of the book out or not. So I just don't keep up with it because the kids don't usually do this. They'll do birds, they'll do mammals, they'll do reptiles and amphibians.
Have you ever had a kid ask, you know, well, how does that fit in with the outdoor code?
I don't think the kids worry about it that much.
Yeah.
They should, but they don't.
Yeah. I just have a kid who's always about technicality, so I'm like always trying to think of, how do I answer that question?
Yeah, I had a kid do reptiles and amphibians, and the amphibian he chose was a salamander that he collected at Cutler, did what he needed to do with it for the month, and returned it right back to where he found it. So there are ways to do that. Again, if you want to really get into this, this is for insects. This is the key. More insects than any other animals. There's one just, I think, a little bit bigger than this, just for beetles. Because there are more beetles than anything else combined. So it gets, and I mentioned earlier that some of these keys are hard to follow. And just to give you an example, I did one on fish. And when you have fish, there is a line down the middle called the lateral line. It's a sense organ, picks up vibrations in the water or electric currents. And for one of the fish I was trying to identify during a graduate course, it said something about lateral line consisting of 55 to 65 scales, or lateral line consisting of 60 to 70 scales. So there was an overlap. Okay. So you pick one and you keep going until you find out you're wrong. And then you go back to where you were.
Great.
And this is after about 50 steps.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they don't always work. And then, this one's been through the wars. We've got a couple of floods in our basement. But this is the key to all the vertebrates, well, many of them in the eastern United States, but not birds. So again, it's key to go through. Works the same as all the other keys, just a little more complex. So, other evidence of animals in the community. We talked about tracks, seeing the actual animal, scat. What was that?
Hearing.
Hearing. What else? I just remember one other thing.
Nest.
There you go. Nest or some sort of house, you know, the hole in the tree.
The hole in my soffit.
Well, that's a woodpecker.
No, squirrel.
Squirrels, okay. Squirrels' nests up in the trees,
Yeah.
big leafy mess.
Yeah.
Birds' nests usually nice, compact, well woven. Let me think what else. Eagle's nest, if you ever see one, they just keep adding to them. They get to be huge, hundreds of pounds worth.
Ospreys too.
Ospreys too. That's why they always build them on some sort of solid surface.
It's heavy.
And they usually, like the eagles, the osprey, they build them up high. Why? So they don't really have to flap to take off. They're already up there.
See the utility companies will build the platform on top of a pole.
Right. I was in Romania in 2017. Same thing. Stork nest on top of, like, every 3 or 4 electric poles. There was a stork's nest. It was really neat to see. I was also thinking of another kind of house that you see. Beaver and muskrat.
Good done.
Okay? In the ponds. Beaver's nice and neat, muskrat, not so much. Just had another. You were talking about the holes in the trees and stuff. Which bird makes the big oval hole?
Isn't those in the pileated woodpecker?
Pileated woodpecker.
Yeah.
And you'll see those on dead trees as you go through pretty much any place. Another one that I saw at Massaweeby that I really loved, and it's not there anymore. There was a piece of a birch trunk down on the ground just outside of the mess hall. And it had little holes in it going around in very nice circles. Nice and even all the way around. There's only one bird that does that. It was a flicker. Another smaller woodpecker. So, kind of interesting things. There's just a lot of stuff out there. Part of this was to, help you figure out how to identify these things, what to use. Use your senior patrol leaders. Use parents. Like I said, hunters on animals, they'll know a lot of this stuff. If you can get them out there with you, that's the way to do it. I like to, I'm big on advancement. And what I like to do is try to do 3 or 4 of these things at once. You do your 5-mile hike. You get a couple of your older scouts to set up your compass course. So So that's one of the requirements, I think, first class for a 1 mile compass course. Do that, and while you're out there doing it, you can do the plants and animals. You get 3 or 4 requirements done at once. And that's even with, you know, you're under scouts, all of a sudden they've got a few second class and first class requirements done. So,
I was just gonna say, as far as just the concept of lifelong learning, because, you know, a lot of times they're thinking of it in terms of, okay, the requirements, they gotta meet the
Right.
requirement, but, you know, I grew up in a household where, you know, we had the bird book, and we're not bird enthusiasts, we don't go bird watching, but it's that, we keep that checklist of birds that I haven't seen yet. And so I'm always looking, and it's like, oh, I don't know that one, and so then I've gotta look it up, and
my checklist is birds I've seen.
well, yeah, I
And
guess,
it gets,
you know,
it gets pretty long. I mean, if
It
you stop to
does.
think about the number of birds you've seen, even in the course of a year, it's a lot longer than you would think.
mhm,
You'll see a couple of kinds of gulls, you'll see crows, you'll see these hawks, robins, cardinals, blue jays. You know, all of a sudden you've got 10, 15 things, sparrows, 3 or 4 types, finches, same thing.
yeah, and so it just gives them that sense of awareness, because, you know, it opens up your eyes to always be looking at the sky, or look at this corner or that corner, and just, you know, have I seen that before?
Now, another thing on bird identification, look at the beaks. It'll also tell you what they eat. Finches, big heavy beaks.
Oh, the beaks.
Seed crackers.
Yeah. Versus,
Parrot beaks, the same thing.
mhm,
Robins, small beak, soft worms.
yeah.
You just going from there. So hopefully I've given you some stuff. I really don't have anything else here, RJ.
Okay, good, thank you
So
very
if
much.
there are questions, I'll be in the back of the room for a little bit. And my books and stuff will collect back there.
All right, thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break, 7-minute break, something like that?